This one is probably the toughest question of them all. And to be honest, one of the toughest questions I think I've ever had to answer in my life. I'm Adam from the Malloy Twins, and this is a solo one-on-one Q&A. So Lee is away this week, I'm on my own, so I asked for the kind people of Instagram to give me a dig out and ask me some questions that I could answer as part of the podcast. So I'm shooting this quick fire Q&A to go through and answer your questions. Just a quick side note, if you're not already, follow us on Instagram at the Malloy Twins, and you'll be able to pop a question in the box that we put up each week before we shoot the podcast in case you want to ask us anything. So first question comes from Robbie Miller at Miller Fitness, and Robbie asks, why is the fitness industry and social media content creation so difficult to navigate? So Robbie, thank you for the question, number one. To answer this, I think when it comes to the fitness industry, first and foremost, in case you don't know, me and Lee actually both have background in the fitness industry. So you're both personal trainers. I was a PT from about 2019 to maybe 2022. And then Lee was a PT from 2024 for about 6-7 months or so before he threw in the towel on it. And with that, I think the fitness industry is difficult to navigate for a couple of reasons. And I'll actually tie it into the content creation piece because it's something that me and Lee both struggled to accept, but eventually had to come around to accepting, is that a lot of the times there's a difference between what people want and what people need. Okay, and this is something that really wrecked my head when I was a PT, is because I would give out content, information, advice, education that I knew was right. Because personally, I just didn't feel good sharing information that I thought was wrong, or was trying to be controversial. I was like just trying to stir the pot a little bit to get a bit of traction and go viral and grow my audience. It wasn't my style. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to share stuff that I knew was actually factually correct, scientifically backed, so it could help people. Because that's what the job was about, right? And what I learned the hard way was that shit doesn't sell, right? For the most part, that's not the kind of stuff that grows your audience. That's not the kind of stuff that gets lots of likes and clicks and views. And as a result, it's the kind of stuff that doesn't grow your business. On the flip side, the stuff that does work, in a sense of it's the stuff that gets likes, gets clicks, gets attention, is the more clickbaity, controversial, saying stuff that's maybe not completely true, but gets a bit of attention or gets people talking. That's the stuff that works in that sense. And so you're kind of left in this position of feeling like, well, the stuff I want to put out that I know is factually correct, that I feel good sharing, doesn't resonate with the audience. The stuff that will resonate with them, that they will like or will want to click into, isn't something I feel comfortable sharing or doing. And so I'm kind of left in this middle ground of, well, what do I do? And it's a tricky one, and it's an old quote, but it's don't hate the player, hate the game. I think it's part of the fitness game, and I think it's just downstream of people's attention. You know, that's ultimately what you're trying to do in the online space, is you're trying to get attention. You're trying to win the battle for your customers or potential customers' attention, or your potential clients' attention. And you're fighting against all the other big influencers, all the big gyms with big budgets, etc., who are able to put the time, money, and effort into trying to create this stuff. And so it's tough. And you're probably not going to win the battle if you just try to fight it on the ground of, okay, you know, how do I have the best camera set up? How can I buy the best equipment? You know, any of that sort of thing, because they're going to have bigger budgets than you. But I think one thing that you can do and you can lean into that will set you apart, as cliche as this sounds, is be you. Be authentic to you. Now, I think there is an element of kind of having to play the game a little bit and lean into like, what's the common trends? What's the common topics? What's the common stuff that's topical at the moment? But how can you bring your own spin to that? How can you be you? How can you be authentic? If you look at a lot of the biggest influencers out there, a lot of them are OGs, like they were there at the very beginning, so they got that first mover advantage. If you think back to the big fitness influencer, YouTuber types, like a lot of the big ones from back in the day are big because they were just some of the first people on the scene. They were the first ones doing it. They caught a nice wave when it was getting interesting and people were getting on top of it. And so as a result, there was this big wave coming to help lift them up. But nowadays, because it's so saturated, let's call it, just being there and like blending into the background, you're not going to get anywhere. So you need to bring something different. And the thing that's going to set you apart from anyone else is you. So I would say to anyone who is a business owner, never mind just fitness, if you're not using social media, number one, give your head a wobble and get on social media, because pretty much all of your potential customers are going to be there, right? It's this age of digital marketing, digital advertising. Gone are the days of putting a post in the newspaper or, you know, sending out leaflets. This is the new wave. So get on that. But number two, On social media, try to bring you to the table as much as possible. Bring your personality out, right? Speak about stuff you're interested in, share the kind of information you like, but keep in mind that it's not just about me sharing it, it's the person on the other end and how they're going to consume it. How can I make it interesting, right? How can I weave a story into it? How can I be personable, right? Open up, be vulnerable, share my spin on things, share my take, my struggles, stuff that I've learned the hard way, maybe, that sort of thing. Because I think, especially in today's world, that's going to set you apart more than anything else, is being real, being authentic, and being relatable. I think people are pissed off, to be blunt. I think people are pissed off, to be blunt, of, especially in the fitness space, right? Fitness influencers just trying to sell products, trying to do things, trying to paint this picture of life that's bullshit and not real. And we all know it, but for some reason people still buy into it. So I think if you can really just lean into that true authenticity, bring yourself to the table, do what feels good for you, but keep in mind that there is a bit of a game that has to be played and you need to give a bit to get a bit, that sort of thing. I think that's where you'll find the sweet spot between being able to navigate this whole world of fitness and social media content creation, but not getting dragged into feeling like you're creating content that you dislike, you hate, or you just feel a bit icky or salesy. So that's my answer, Robbie. Hope it helps. Next question then comes from Mark Hannah Malloy. No relation to us Malloy twins, but hey, Annie Malloy is a friend of ours. And Mark asked, do you still play football? So I do and I don't. So I do not play in a formal sense. I'm not part of a team anymore. To give a little bit of background, I started off playing for Ashwood, which was my local team. Went to St. Francis, then went to Home Farm, then went to Crumlin, and that's when I kind of realised, right, the Premier League dream is not going to happen here. So I started to work my way back down the leagues, went to Knockmitten, which again, another local team, then played for Boot Road Celtic most recently, and as of the last couple of years, haven't played with a team at all. Also had a stint, actually, when I lived in London, played for a team called Isle of Dogs FC. Up the dogs, they actually folded. So hopefully all the lads are doing well though. And since the last couple of years, I haven't played in any formal sense. Now, I still play Astro, so five-a-side, usually on a Friday night, I'll play that. But outside of that, I don't play ball. I get the odd, like sometimes I'll be sitting here watching a match, watching United or something like, oh yeah, you know what, part of me is getting a bit of an itch to lace the boots back up and give it another bash. But I think for the most part, I've just kind of, I don't know, I'm doing other stuff at the moment. Like I'm being big into the gym and like lifting weights for years. So I still do that consistently. I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu the last few months and that's been going well. So yeah, I'm still interested in football, still love the sport, but getting back into playing for a team, I don't think I'd be willing to commit to at this stage. But thanks for the question, Mark. Next question comes from a man I have to give a shout out to, an OG listener of the Malloy Twins podcast, a personal friend of ours from a very young age and someone who we still have a great relationship with today, is Mr. Eddie Goulsbury. So Eddie, thank you for your question, my friend, and thank you for being a loyal supporter of the podcast. And Eddie asked us, do you have any short-term goals you want to achieve by the end of the year or for 2025? Great question. It's stuff that me and Lee do speak about quite a lot. We'll probably sit down and have a more formal conversation about it coming close to the end of the year. But I think the short-term goals, if I just look at between now and end of year, end of 2024, the main aims would be, firstly, when it comes to the podcast, getting stuff sorted out in terms of our logistical setup. So you may notice we're not in the studio. We covered that in a couple of episodes recently. But we had a studio set up, wanted to change around, play with some new things. So we're looking at new locations, new things we can try out to be able to do some more guest episodes in person. We do enjoy having that aspect of the podcast. It's something we want to bring back, but we need to find the right setup and make sure it works for us. So we want to get that sorted so we can start releasing some guest episodes, and to ideally get a couple of guest episodes done and out before the end of the year would be great. Outside of that, when it comes to the podcast, I think a big thing for us will be figuring out the direction that we want to go with it. So, you know, over the last year or so of running it, we've been blessed to have so many great conversations. We've kind of taken it in a few different directions a couple of times. So I think we want to figure out for the next few months at least, what's the kind of direction we want to take it, what's the kind of impact we want to have, and then working backwards from there to make sure that we can make it happen. So I think from a podcast perspective, that's the goal, the aims of what we want to do is get our logistical setup sorted. So we know how we can record with guests, have our studio set up, get all that sorted out. Obviously stay consistent in terms of pumping out the content and showing up for you guys. And then also get clarity on what direction we want to take the podcast, the kind of conversations we want to have, topics we want to touch on, and bringing that all into play. And then the final question, to keep it short and sweet, but this one is probably the toughest question of them all. And to be honest, one of the toughest questions I think I've ever had to answer in my life is from Katie Ann Dodd. So Katie Ann, thank you for asking, is Pointless question. Always good when the question starts with pointless question. But what packet of biscuits would you take to a desert island if you could only choose one? Now, I'll be honest, I read this before shooting and it left me stuck for a bit. I was like, I'll need to ponder that one a little bit longer because I don't have a quick answer. And I'm glad I'm shooting this today because otherwise I'd be up all night and probably the rest of the week trying to figure it out. But I think in the desert island scenario, there's some stuff you want to keep in mind here, right? So you're on a desert island, first of all. So it's going to be hot. So whatever you bring, you need to make sure it's not going to melt too much. Otherwise, you're done. Your biscuits are gone. On the flip side, you can't pick something that's going to be too dry. Think of like a rich tea biscuit or a digestive biscuit because you probably don't have water. So it means, you eat too much of them, you'll probably get like cotton mouth or something, and then you're just basically got to kill yourself. So you need to be strategic. But there's also the enjoyment factor. You're on a desert island, you're probably going to be bored. This biscuit is probably one of your only dopamine hits you'll get throughout the day. So you want to make sure it's something you'll actually like and enjoy. So taking all those things into consideration, I think if I had to pick one, gun to the head, I'd probably go for an Oreo. And the reason why I'd pick an Oreo is, number one, I just like Oreos. They taste good. Number two, I like that there's a bit of variety with an Oreo. Because you've got the biscuit, you've got the bit of filling, and then you've got another little biscuit on top. So it means you can kind of get creative with how you eat it. Yeah, you can like lift off the top biscuit, eat that by itself, and then you've got the biscuit with the bit of filling on top. You can just eat the filling bit. You can eat it all as like a little sambo. So it gives you a bit of variety that you can kind of keep things interesting. I am a little bit unsure if the filling will last with the heat of the desert island though. I'm unsure on that, but I'm willing to take the gamble and take the risk. Because I think when all is said and done and I'm lying there at the end of the day in this desert island by myself, I think tucking into a nice little Oreo would bring a little smile to my face to give me that hope that maybe tomorrow will be the day that someone comes to rescue me. So I'll go for an Oreo. We'll ask Lee when he's back what his answer would be. But for you watching this, let us know in the comments. I want to hear it. What's your biscuit? What biscuit you taking? You can only pick one. You're on this desert island. What you taking? So that's it for today's solo Q&A. I hope those questions were helpful, insightful, or at least in some way entertaining. And I look forward to seeing you soon. If you haven't, please just do us a quick favor and press that subscribe button. It really does help us out a lot with the channel and with the podcast.